welcome everybody to the West Canada Valley Board of Education regular meeting. Tonight is Monday, September 12th, just in case you forgot. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So tonight we have a presentation. Weston Company is going to do our audit committee meeting. And there's papers in front of you. Direct audit.
So each of you received a draft audit, and I'm Michael Rossi. I'm a partner at Weston Company. I've been here before in front of you. It is our job as the audit committee to review this document, and then for the audit committee to make a recommendation to accept the audit to the Board of Education. This audit is due to the New York State Controller and Education Department and the federal government as of October 15th. So there's a lot of time to go through this document in the next month and make that recommendation for acceptance. So the audit starts off pages 1 through 3. That is our opinion, and that's what we do as a profession. We attach opinions to the financial statement. And at the top of page 1, it says opinions, and in paragraph 2 we say, in our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly. That is an unmodified opinion. That is the highest opinion we have as a profession. After that, pages 4 through 12 are what we call management, discussion, and analysis. For the last 20 years, they've accompanied all governmental audits. This is GASB creates the rules and we follow them. So an MDA was added about 20 years ago. And it's a snapshot. It's a chance for the reader to review a few pages and have an understanding of what goes on in the district. One thing that I have to caution you on, though, in the MD&A is many of these schedules are on the full accrual basis of accounting. And we do not and are not allowed to keep our books on the full accrual basis of accounting. New York State makes us use the modified accrual basis of accounting, which we will see. And a lot of these schedules fluctuate, and it's out of the district's hands, which causes those fluctuations. And I'll show you that on another page. So the MD&A is required to be in the financial statements, and we have it in the financial statements. Page 9 is one of the things that the MD&A, they really wanted to emphasize. You know, they didn't want a whole document of words and numbers, so they wanted something else. And here's 2 charts. If somebody looked at them, they could say, okay, the revenues of this district are, well, state aid is 62%, property taxes are 29%. And at the bottom, they could see that we spend almost 70% on instruction alone. So that's another way for the reader to have an understanding of what goes on in the district. And if there's any questions at any time, just stop me and I'll answer anything you'd like. Page 13. When I said that many of these schedules are on the full accrual, GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, makes us have a full accrual balance sheet. And if you look all the way at the bottom, the total net position of West Canada Valley is negative $30 million. And what makes that up, under liabilities in the middle, almost all the way down to where it says total liabilities, other post-employment benefits payable, $56 million. Does everybody see that number? That's the study of our health insurance going forward out into the years based on the contracts we have, how many retirees we have, the medical trends rates, and the interest rate that can be earned. So we have that liability. New York State does not allow any school district to fund a reserve for that liability, and we continue to be what we call pay as you go. So each year when we build the budget that the voters vote on in May, we put in a line for health insurance for our retirees and current employees. That's pay as you go. So that's one of the big differences between full accrual and modified accrual. You don't pick up those liabilities. Additionally, on this page, on page 13, under assets, where it says net pension asset proportionate share, and you see 5,408,785. Each year, we also have to study the pension system, and we have two pensions, TRS and ERS, and both of those were found to be overfunded when New York State did the audit of the pensions. So we have a $5.4 million asset on our full accrual books. Again, the issue with that is we are not allowed to use that asset. We are not allowed to apply that to our TRS or ERS payments. We still make those payments as New York State requires. So overall, on a government-wide basis, full accrual, we have a $29 million net position, none of which has to be funded at this time. The more important page is page 15. This is modified accrual. This is how we are required to keep our books. And these are the funds that the district currently has. The first fund is the general fund. It accounts for almost all of the activities that happen in any school district. And if you look at the general fund, we have assets of about 5.6 million, liabilities of 724,000, and the difference, 4.9 million, is what we call fund balance. Fund balance can be in 5 categories. Here we have 4 of them because New York State has said the 5th category, committed, is not to be used in schools. Non-spendable inventory, we only have that in the school lunch fund. We don't have inventory in our general fund, so we have a 0 there. Reserve for debt, that money, $50,000, is in our debt fund, and that can be used only to pay back principal or interest on bonded debt. And then we have 3 reserves. A workers' comp reserve, that can be used for worker comp type items, claims. And then retirement contribution reserve, ERS, that is for the employee retirement system, and retirement contribution, TRS, that is for the teacher retirement system. Then you see the word assigned fund balance, and you see $1.8 million. Assigned fund balance is the amount of money that we are giving back to the taxpayers to balance the budget. The taxpayers vote in May on an expenditure budget. We've said our revenues are gonna fall short by about $1.8 million, so we are putting that back towards balancing the budget. Also in there, in the assigned, is a little bit of encumbrances at the end of the year, about 18,000. They roll forward and automatically increase next year's budget. Then the last one is unassigned, $2,144,000. This does exceed real property law 1318, as it has for several years at this district. And we do have a management letter item in the back that you will see. This can only really be 4% under real property law 1318. It's 4% of next year's budget. So it does exceed it. One thing to note is that the fund balance does not necessarily come back as all cash. The cash position at the district and the assets are made up of receivables due to due froms, payables. So just because you see 4.9 million doesn't mean you have 4.9 million necessarily to spend right now. A lot of the revenue doesn't come in until the fall, and a lot of expenditures do happen throughout the summer. And this is as of June 30, 2022. The second column is a special aid fund. That has no fund balance and probably never will. It's grants that the district receives, and in order to get the revenue, we must spend the grant dollars first. So there is no fund balance. Third column, school lunch fund, that accounts for our lunch program. And you can see our total fund balance in here is now negative $68,097. It's an improvement over last year. We had a profit, I would say, in the school lunch fund. We'll talk about that in 2 pages. Debt service fund has the $50,000 that can only be used for bonded debt, as I said. The capital project fund has a negative $172,000 fund balance, and that is typical. We've started a new renovation project, we've spent money, and until that project receives permanent financing, either the general fund makes a transfer to cover it, or we bond the debt, or in this case, we're gonna use some COVID monies to pay for the renovation project. So until that money is applied, you'll run a deficit. Once that money is applied, the whole capital fund will go to 0. And then CM miscellaneous special revenue fund, This came about last year. GASB 84 was a new GASB, and it said things that were under the control of a school district had to be part of the funds, and here we had scholarships that we decided were under the control of the school, so there's about $55,000 in scholarships. Does anybody have any questions on the balance sheets? That's a pretty important document. Okay, page 17. When I said that our balance sheet was as of June 30th, and that's where we wound up, assets and liabilities. This is the other side of it. This is June 30th. This is revenue and expenditures. So if you look all the way down towards the bottom, excess deficiency of revenues and other sources over expenditures and uses, you see the general fund actually had $217,804 worth of excess revenues. So we grew our fund balance by $217,000. Special aid fund, again, 0 because we have to spend the grant money to get the grant money. The school lunch fund actually had an $81,000 excess revenue to bring that loss down to $68,000. And again, we have to be cautious here because that looks really good for June 30, 2022, but the kids were back and there was a lot of additional COVID funding with the school lunch program, so I don't know where that's gonna go. But school lunch programs, they're supposed to be self-sufficient. The debt service fund on $50,000 earned $17 in interest. The capital fund, you can see, is $210,000 deficiency. Most of that is our new capital renovation project that we started. And then the scholarships were down $993 this year. So overall, that's the revenue and expense side of that. After that, pages 20 through 46 are the notes to the financial statement. And the only thing new in the notes this year are GASB 87, and GASB 87 made districts recognize leases as liabilities. So what we would do before is we would go out to BOCES and we'd say, BOCES, we'd buy some equipment, and BOCES would say, okay, over the next 4 or 5 years, we'll let you pay it on our BOCES bill. And nowhere did the district ever recognize that we have 4 years worth of payments left to pay off that lease. So on page 40, this is a new note, and it's just a summary of lease payables. And as of 6/30/22, we owe about $62,000 on these leases. So not an incredible amount of leases, but it is new. It's a new GASB. The district complied with it, and we placed it into the financial statements. After that, we go over to page 47 and 48. So page 47 and 48, it says required supplementary information at the top. That means GASB requires it to be in the financial statements. And here we have the general fund budget. This is the revenue side. The general fund is the only legally adopted budget, and that's why it is in the financial statements like this. And you can see our revenues, we projected $17,789,42. We received $17,611,385, so about $178,000 short. And that's right in line. $178,000 on $17 million is nothing. So it's a good job of being able to predict your revenues. You don't want a big shortfall in revenues, because then if you spend the entire budget, your fund balance goes to 0 quickly. Page 48 is the budget side of the general fund budget. And the voters, the first column is the original budget. That's what the voters voted on in May. The second column, you can see it's up slightly from the first column, a few $1,000s. That's encumbrances that rolled over to increase the budget. Then we actually had expenditures of $17.4 million, leaving a budget of $1.5 million left. Typically, that is what we see in school districts. We see a final budget, an actual, and then we see a variance that is positive. We don't want to see you overspend a budget. It's not legal to overspend the budget. Okay, then page 52 So at the top of page 52, it says supplementary information. That means somebody other than GASB has required it to be in the financial statements. And in this case, it's New York State. And you can see that our 2023 budget in the middle of the page is $19,671,986. 4% of that would be $786,879. And as I said back on page 15, we have $2,144,599, 10.9%. Again, real property law 1318 says it can't exceed 4%. Okay, so then we move forward on page 56. So pages 1 through 3 were Weston Company. All those other pages were management's, because this is management's financial that we attach opinions to. Page 56 is our internal audit report over internal controls. And here, because it's a yellow book audit, we have to opine on internal controls over financial reporting, because we couldn't put this document together and then say the controls were good if they weren't. So in this case, it's an unmodified opinion, it's well done, there's nothing wrong with the books and records. We come in, they're in good shape. Obviously, it's September the 12th, this isn't even due for a month, and we're already here with a 70-page document. So no issues that we found with the internal controls over financial reporting. Pages 58 and 59 are the next opinion from Weston Company. So this district currently has about $1.1 million in federal revenue. That's school lunch receipts, that's spending of some COVID money, some Title I money, 611, 619 special education monies. So anytime that exceeds $750,000, you have to have what is called a compliance audit, a single audit. And here we tested the child nutrition cluster, and we had no issues with that. And we are required to test 20%. The child nutrition cluster came out to about 35%. So we tested additional dollars over what was required by the federal government. On page 60, we lay out all of the grants and the Department of Agriculture money to get to that 1.147 money. Now, as I said earlier with the project, I know we're going to spend some COVID stabilization funds on the project. So it's very possible that next year we will have to audit them, because those could go up significantly compared to the other grants. Okay, page 62 is a recap of basically everything that I've told you so far. Auditor's report issued, unmodified, highest opinion we have. No material weaknesses, no instances of noncompliance. Federal awards, no material weaknesses, unmodified opinion. We consider you a low-risk auditee because you do your audits timely and haven't had significant findings. And that's where we say we audited child nutrition cluster. Then after that, we have our extra classroom activity funds. They are on page 67. We list out all of your clubs. The one thing with the extra classroom activity fund, it is on the cash basis of accounting. So we have the full accrual where you make all kinds of accruals for everything under the sun. Modified accrual, how we account, and now cash. And the one issue with the cash basis system is we have to qualify the opinion because we're not at every event, nor can we be at the event when it happens. So we only audit from when the money goes in the bank and when the check is written. So it's inherent in a cash audit. Again, we have about $68,000 worth of monies in our extra classroom activity fund. Then we have on page 69 and 70 our management letter. In our management letter, we always list out the prior findings, and these are low-level findings. These are not significant to what the books and records say. They have no bearing on our opinions. If something was significant, we would have to modify one of our opinions. So the first one was the extra classroom activity fund. We had an instance where sales tax was not paid. That was corrected for June 30, 2022. We did not find that issue. The second one, we had a school lunch deficit note, and basically, we've said that that's improved. The deficit decreased by that 81,000, but it's still a deficit. So that is something that we're gonna have to work on to get back to zero. The third one from last year was the unassigned fund balance. I went over that, and that is 10.9%, so that's still there. 4 and 5 last year, disbursement testing and accounting for GASB 84, those were both corrected for June 30, 2022, so no issues there. And the ones that say corrected will be removed next year, you won't see them. It'll start with the current year plus the ones that were remaining. And in the current year, we had one new finding, and that was testing and payroll. We noticed 2 instances where the timesheet was not signed by the supervisor, and 1 instance where the annual salary letter was not signed by the employee. It is important, those are controls. We'd like to make sure that the supervisor does sign any time cards, and we'd like to make sure that the employee returns that, so we know that somebody else other than the business office said that was the salary for the year. But overall, the audit went well. We're a month ahead of where we have to be. This gets electronically transmitted to OSC and SED after it comes out of draft, after there's an acceptance by the board, and then we electronically also transmit to the federal government. The one thing that once it becomes, I tried to keep it as short as I could. Are there any questions or thoughts or anything you want to know? Yes.
On page 9,
Yes.
the chart, when it says general support 18.6% expenses, is that overhead of salaries, administration, or teachers in the instruction?
Nope. General support is the first several sets of categories of expenditures in the budget. It includes the Board of Education, the central administration, the finance, our audit, the staff of that, central services, so the heating and stuff of the building, that's
Okay.
the general support. Legal counsel, those types of things are the general support categories. And those on page 48, where I was talking about the budget, you can see what each category was for general support.
The lunch program, why is there an issue with that?
Because all funds are supposed to be self-sustaining. So the general fund is a legally adopted budget, and we have to put money in the budget to pay for the school lunch fund. We should be charging enough in our school lunch fund, or having enough free and reduced participation to cover the expenses of the lunch fund. But I will say that several years ago, we had to serve, I'll say, better foods, more costly foods, and with the cost of retirement, health insurance, and those things, it's very difficult now for the school lunch funds in New York State to be profitable. Now, this year it was profitable because there was additional monies given. Every student got to eat for free, but that is gonna go away over the years. So you either have to build it into your general fund budget, and that would take away from instructing children, or have a self-sustaining school lunch program. And this doesn't have to stop tonight. Amy from my office or myself, we're available all the time. You can get our email through Kelly, or you can just call the office and talk to us, and we'd answer any question any board member has at any time. Or talk about anything else the board members would like to talk about.
Any other questions? You're good? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
Too. Take care.
I gotta put my pencil back here.
Just a nice job on hearing, been through a lot of audit reports.
Okay, we hear from the administrators. Mr. Ray, sounds like he's looking right at you.
Mine's real short. We were just here a couple weeks ago, so, do you wanna say staffing, we're fully staffed over there, first time in a long time. Feels really good to be that way. We do have an anticipated retirement coming up in January. She hasn't given me her letter yet, but I'm expecting it soon. Buses, we're still expecting them, the 3 in December for delivery. We started sports trips. We had a couple different special needs programs that got switched around, so we had a little bit of tweaking we had to do at the beginning last week, but we're all set and things run smooth. Any questions?
Thanks. Mrs. Holmes?
So the opening of school went great, as planned. Everybody came in, they looked happy to be here. Teachers were well organized, ready to go. Superintendent conference days, I'm just gonna go through the different things that we did on those days with you. We had grade level teams meet to discuss their ELA and math curriculum, as well as update their RTI plans. Our integrated co-teaching team spent time together planning for the upcoming school year. The RTI committee met to finalize our current RTI plan and update our RTI Edge database. And a review of the RTI Edge program was presented to the teachers. Mrs. Main and Mrs. Schnabel met with the 3 through 6 staff to go over the item analysis for the state assessments, and teachers worked together with their grade levels to create action plans for the first quarter, and they turned those into me. Our literacy and RTI specialists in K2 met with the grade levels they'll be working with to review our Orton-Gillingham program, and they also developed action plans based on the student data that we collected at the end of the 21-22 school year on those students. Our kindergarten classes, they're now up to 14 students, which is really good because I was a little bit worried, but that's actually right in the middle of the average. We're between, I think right now, 12 and 18, so 14 is a good number. Morning program started this morning. Kids loved it. They came in, they were great, and we'll be having parents join us on Fridays this year. And our open house is scheduled on September 15th, which is this Thursday, from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock.
Is that with students or just
With
parents?
students, yes. You can all come.
Are all the parents okay with Fridays only for?
No one has said a word,
Oh, good,
so
good.
I haven't gotten one single phone call. I think they understand it's for security purposes, so
Right.
I think we'll be okay with it.
Nice.
Any state test scores in yet?
We have them. I think they're still embargoed, so that would be an executive session type of discussion, but they are in, yes. Okay, thank you.
Great. Mr. Dooley?
Hi. For fall sports, we just wrapped up our soccer tournament this weekend. It ended up being a girls-only tournament, which actually went well. They won it. They were undefeated. They beat UAS in the first game, and then they beat Old Forge in the championship game. Boys modified soccer, we were able to get all the way up to 11, which is just enough to field the team, so we are going to press forward with that. We're going to do the 11. I already reached out to the 5 other schools that we play home and away matches with, because undoubtedly somebody will probably end up injured or sick one day, and they're all okay with playing 10 versus 10 on those days. And we actually, Mr. Young's is going to open it up to the varsity players that didn't get an opportunity to play. Since there is no varsity team, they would actually be able to come down and practice with them to kind of do that intramural thing that you were talking about. So hopefully we can keep the interest within the sport and, hopefully not lose the team next year. The helmet shortage that I brought up the last time was alleviated. Pop Warner doesn't have a U12 team, so they were able to help us out like we've helped them out in years past. So all of our kids are properly equipped at the modified level. We wound up with 4 modified girls swimmers this year, which is not quite enough to field the team. Holland Pat wound up in the same boat this year, so we're working at trying to get them into the other modified meets. They kind of all go together. There's like 4 of them. They'll host one in Adirondack, they'll host one in Whitesboro, whatever, but possibly trying to get them to exhibition. So we're letting them practice with them, but it would give the girls an opportunity to, go and compete in a match, even if it's as an exhibition. I brought up the 97 thing for the homecoming game this year. We're going to invite all the football players, and actually we already sent out a message for the football players and the cheerleaders, inviting them back. We'll honor them at halftime, say their names, and honor the accomplishments of the 97 team. Winter sports, we've kind of talked about this a little bit. We're in 4 tournaments this year, 2 for each, the boys and the girls. We will be hosting the tip-off tournament at home for the girls. Teams competing in that would be Richfield, Brookfield, and Westmoreland. For the boys, they're going on the road down to Richfield for theirs. Those teams, at home for us would be CBA, Mount Markham, and Onondaga as the new team to our tournament this year. For our away trips, the boys are going to Richfield, and that tournament is Richfield, Sequoia, and BBS. And the girls are going up to Adirondack for a Christmas tournament there, and they're playing Herkimer, Beaver River, and Adirondack. I don't have any updates on spring sports at the time, and I did mention to you before about the guidance office came up with the idea of doing an elective lifeguarding course here, which I said sounded great until I all of a sudden tried to find out how to get a lifeguard certified as a lifeguard instructor, and it's not a super easy thing to do, but we have the potential of being able to host a class here, which would then get Coach Russo certified, so we could offer a half-year elective here. So we would always have a supply of lifeguards is the idea behind that. Oh, and one other thing, the huddle camera for football field, just like the basketball one, we do have it installed outside because of the location of our scoreboard. So if you ever watched one of our basketball games at home, it has a little corner shot there, so you can always see the scoreboard there. Our scoreboard is not where, if you're ever at a game, usually it's across the field from the press box. At our stadium, it's along the same sideline. So we are working on a way to fix that. I think there is a way that I can superimpose the scoreboard in there, but it may not be done by Saturday yet. So they're having kind of a process of trying to get us hooked up with that, working with the company. So it is coming, hopefully eventually, but the game we will be able to stream it this weekend. It'll be our first one with Bishop Grimes. We might not have a scoreboard.
Do you have somebody commentating too?
Yeah, I'll have somebody up in the box, and then I'll just express that to them, that if we don't have the scoreboard going, that they'll say it a whole bunch of times.
Video or just the announcements?
Like announcing during the game, any?
Yeah, announcing things. It's not
Not
like
like
play-by-play.
play.
Yeah, no, I don't have the Manning cast up there or anything like
Yeah.
that. But yes, we will announce touchdowns, turnovers, and
Right,
big
okay.
plays and things like that. Just like last year, and nothing changed there.
For the streaming,
Mhm.
like Saturday, if you wanted to watch Thousand Islands, you needed to log in, make an account, and pay for
So
it.
that's NFHS, which is why we purposely didn't use that system. We went with Huddle for ours because we were able to stream them on YouTube last year, which actually nothing's going to change, nobody's gonna notice anything different, but we won't even be using YouTube this year because of the camera that we have. We'll have our own West Canada Huddle page. So if you didn't go to the regional game when we played at Liverpool last year, and you watched it on theirs, that's the exact thing. So you're still gonna click on the athletic streaming tab at West Canada, and it's gonna take you right to this, and you won't have to pay anything for it at all. In fact, there's even a box up at the top for advertising. I'm trying to figure out a way to remove that, so that's not even the slightest confusion on it.
So that goes with all the streaming, no matter what sport it is. If some of the schools chose to go the NFHS route, so if they're the ones hosting it and you want to watch it on their stream, you have to subscribe. to
Right, yeah, no, I was
Yeah.
curious just for
Yeah.
people that are interested in watching it,
Yeah.
if they have to actually.
Yeah, so we don't do that here. I mean, that's the big push that they're going with that. So they give that camera away for free because they market it to the schools that you can generate a lot of money off of advertising and subscriptions. So you got some athletic departments out there, they say make $5,000 to $10,000 a year off it, which I know is not an interest of ours. So that's why we went with Huddle, and it's a better stream too, to be honest with you. So of the people that I know that have the Pixel camera, they're very jealous of the Huddle systems. So.
And you put that out on social media, that'll be ready for Saturday?
It will be, yeah. The link's already up there for Gordon, so we'll put it out there that people can stream there. But I was hoping to get the scoreboard thing taken care of before that, but it's proving to be not as easy as I hoped. Any questions?
Thanks.
Okay.
Mr. Butler?
So the opening day meetings with the students and staff went well. Teachers attended a PD on restorative practices, which is kind of a way to look at discipline and ways to work with the student to improve behavior, be proactive, instead of just the punitive part of it. So we're trying to get more professional development on that. We're gonna have 2 book studies, one in the fall, one in the spring on that, as well as we're gonna have PD on both half days. Kind of just look at ways to be proactive in our classrooms, instead of suspending and detention. Maybe we could work with kids, find the root of the problem, and address the problem before it really becomes a problem. Open house is September 22nd, 6:30 to 7:30. Just want to give a shout out to the tech department. Chromebooks, we put out a lot of Chromebooks beginning of the school year. They did a great job, it was organized, we got them out fairly quickly to the students, and we're able to start our first day with those Chromebooks, so that's great. Just want to kind of tell you a little bit, classes, we have 10 College Now classes right now with 53 students taking at least one College Now class, and we have 5 AP classes with 26 students taking at least one AP class. So we got a lot of higher level courses that we're offering our students, a lot of college credits that they can walk out of here with. Mr. Kemmler, I looked up the question about the regents, if any schools around here take the regents, and if they get a higher score than their class, they give them credit. You were asking last meeting?
Yeah.
Yep, so none of the districts around here do that. One of the principals said West Jenny may still do that, they did it in the past, but he wasn't sure. And then CVA occasionally will, if a student pulls off a high score in the regents, they will look at the overall student in the committee and decide if they want to maybe grant credit because of the test, but there is no overall policy where they just do that. So that's to the regents exam. Wanted to bring up hats one more time. You asked me to get some more data. So CVA, Little Falls, BOCES, Frankfurt, and Mount Markham all indicate that they allow hats. Frankfurt and Mount Markham give some of the discretion to the teachers. I surveyed the teachers. 54% of the teachers said that students should be able to wear baseball caps. 57% said they had no problems with the students wearing beanies or like winter hats or those type of hats. Ultimately, as long as it's not covering the kids' ears where they can wear headphones or anything like that, or any large hat that would maybe be disruptive to class. And 76% said no hood. So ultimately, the concern is that covering of the ears and kind of closing off. But the baseball caps, it started out high and then they had some questions, so it's a little over 50%. So I wanted to bring that to you. I didn't know if you wanted to change your mind, if you thought about it, if you I think there's a lot of good reasons to allow it, religious reasons, medical reasons. We have kids who maybe, don't have a fresh haircut, as they say, and they feel uncomfortable coming to school. And, just to make our students more comfortable in school, I think it may be a, good policy. And it's something we could look at, and if it's causing disruptions, if it's causing issues, we can ultimately go back on it. We can tell the kids, I can meet with them, say, if this works out, great. If it's not working out, we'll just go back to our original plan with no hats.
So Robin, are you yourself, I know you manage a lot of hat wearing and not having them taken off. Are you concerned with any management issues with the hats at all?
No, I think our management issues will actually decrease a little bit because of the hats. I have no concerns about safety because of hats or anything like that. My opinion, I don't think it's going to negatively affect the school at all by allowing the hats. Actually, I think it may make some students feel more comfortable about being here at school and just.
I'm a hat person, so I'd say allow the hats, but that's my opinion.
I
and
wear
that's-
hats outside of school as well.
Right. If the teachers, most of them are okay with it, and you are, maybe just, like you said, tell them that you're gonna try it out and see, and if it's a problem, I don't know.
This is for high school only, correct?
7 through 12. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Who is gonna manage it?
Just same as anything else, I'll manage it. I'm managing the hats now, so if it becomes an issue, appropriate, same as other dress code stuff.
What's the rule for in the classroom?
I would allow them to wear hats in the classroom. as
Allow
long
them?
as- Yeah.
To wear them in the classroom?
I would either say no hats completely or hats allowed. If you
What
have
about
that
lunch?
lunch, I would allow them. I would.
What about a band and chorus concert?
No, I would say concert, just like you're not gonna wear them on the basketball court. They would have to be pro fit. If there is a, like PE, sometimes you wanna be wearing a hat because you're playing basketball or other sports, so you're not gonna wear them to swim. So I would say if there's a safety issue or concern like that, if we have like a kind of a professionalism where we're at a concert or something like that, or a play, you're not gonna wear a hat. It would probably just be normally like
What types of hat?
baseball caps, winter caps.
Any kind of hat?
I mean, with reason, they're not gonna wear sombreros that block the kids behind them, or, our kids aren't coming into school now, walking off the bus with cowboy hats and sombreros, and, you know, they're walking off with baseball caps and winter hats.
Do
And
you
in the
run-
winter, they get cold.
Do you run into any issues with the hat, like the kids that you talk to about their hats, do they come in with hats that you would deem as inappropriate right now very often, or no?
No, I mean, the hats aren't inappropriate, our kids are pretty respectful kids.
There's a lot of hats that are inappropriate.
There are, and there's a lot of shirts
Right.
that are inappropriate too, that we address if they.
Have you taken a survey of the teachers of whether they want the hats in the classroom or not?
So ultimately, the survey was if hats would be allowed, they're gonna be allowed everywhere except for a safety. So when the 54% said, or 57%, it was to allow them in the classroom.
So half say yes and half say no.
Yeah, approximately half. There's a few that, you know, are, like you and Mr. Marco mentioned last time, it's kind of traditional, respecting, you know, that they feel that, you know, hats in the building.
What is the main concern that they can't wear their hats? Why did this all surface so quickly?
So it wasn't quickly, when
Yeah, it was quickly.
well, last year.
Last meeting.
Well, the last meeting is the first I brought it to you. So ultimately, this has been something kids have been asking for since I've been here. Why can't we wear hats? And I tell them that it's a policy. Well, it's, you know, it's part of the school's, you know, rules and stuff like that. And, you know.
It's not a policy though, right?
So the policy, the board has a dress code policy that refers to the code of conduct. And we kind of put it in the handbook. So it's not a direct policy anywhere written, board policy wise, that they can't wear hats. It says you defer to the code of conduct, dress code policy.
And then in there it says.
It does mention hats other than religious and medical purposes. But we also, I don't think, have really addressed or looked at our code of conduct in many years as far as changing what's in there.
The other piece of the code of conduct is it gives like a few examples, like there are things that aren't in there that we wouldn't allow to, it just gives
Right.
such as,
Mhm.
you know, those kinds of things.
And same with shirts and tube tops and, you know, it's just a list of, and stuff we've added to our student handbook, like blankets and pajamas and different stuff like that we've done over the years. But it's just kind of been that way since forever. I mean, I'm not concerned that it's gonna cause any issues that arise due to content or anything like that would be dealt with the same as if they were an appropriate shirt. I would confiscate the hat, I would tell them they can wear it again, talk to them about why it's inappropriate. If it happened again, I would call the parents and say, hey, I've already spoke to them, told them they can't wear this hat in school, please, you know, assist us with, you know, making sure they wear an appropriate hat. Same with if they wear an appropriate shirt.
Is this a public building?
Yes, yeah, it's a public building, but it's a secured public building at times.
Is there any regulations about walking in a public building with a hat on?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so.
Oh, yeah, there is.
Is there?
There is. I mean, you wouldn't walk into the state office building and wear a hat. You take it off.
But it's not illegal, right?
Yeah, I mean, people do, I mean, I used to go to court all the time for Utica and wore hats all the time. You didn't wear it in the courtroom unless you wanted to lose. But, I saw, you know, kids and parents and
Who originally gave this survey?
to the teachers. So it wasn't a survey, it was, every year for our, school improvement plan, the SEP. We have to, have like focus groups with students. Ask them what kind of things are going on in the school, what kind of things do you want changed. Some of the things that they mentioned, big things were they wanted more say in how the school's run. One of the things that was mentioned with every group, and not every single kid in the group, but every group, because it's a qualitative, not a quantitative survey, was that they would like to be able to wear hats. something little in their mind, it's something that's not disrespectful, it's something that they do, their parents do outside of school. So that's how it came about. So the representatives for CASDA take a group of kids, they ask them a bunch of questions, and we shared that with you, it probably would have been the end of last year, the questions that we asked the kids. And, you know, they talk about bullying, they talk about their classrooms, they talk about what they like about teachers, what kind of lessons they like, everything to try to provide us with feedback to kind of help them make it a better school. And, you know, that's something we do every single year. And one of the things that came up that last year was the hats. It was, you know, school lunches come up sometimes, they wanted more say, so Mrs. Butler kind of surveyed the kids to see what kind of lunch they want. She's paying more attention to, you know, what lunches were bought more often, and she's trying to adjust that, you know, for the kids. So, you know, a lot of good things come out of it. Some things that they want are things that really are beyond our control. You know, they're just state regulations or rules.
What's next?
What's next? I haven't had anything next, so, I mean, I don't think it's gonna be a domino effect.
Well, there had to be other things on the survey.
Food, they wanted better food. I mean, that was,
Do what?
hats and better food was their kids. They asked for like
That's what's
stuff like
important
that.
to them.
They
Hats
want
and
more
better food.
dances, they want more extracurriculars, which we're doing, like the kids were asking for volleyball, so we're gonna try to get them a night or so in the gym as a intramural. We have a book circle, we have a sewing circle, kids wanted debates, we added that. They just want more fun stuff to do, they wanna do more activities with their friends. So we try, things we can do to, you know, make school better, more enjoyable for them, that's what we're trying to do. And that's really a big part of that SEP survey, is to make them a stakeholder in the decision-making process. I told many of them could come to the board meeting if they want. I explained that to them, that, you know, if they have something they feel strongly about, they're welcome to come down the road. If there's a club or anything like that, I said, you know, you start with me. I'll talk to Mr. Shepperson, Mr. Doherty if it's like sports, and that's what we did when they came to me for the volleyball. Just trying to make them more involved, more of a citizen, being active and participation, and that was one of the things that came out of it. I was interactive.
Mr. Doherty, does this include when they go away to a school? Our teams go to a school, they can wear their hats?
I mean, when they're playing in a contest?
Pardon me?
I said when they're playing in a contest, I mean, they wouldn't be allowed to wear a hat on a field or.
You
No,
say
but I mean, if they
traveling.
go to a basketball game, are they gonna be allowed to wear a hat inside the other schools?
I can't answer that definitively for you if anybody wears hats. I know, like, I coach the golf team, so I mean, we wear hats when we go around to other places and
What
of
happens
course
if
it's
they
fun.
wear hats and the people at the other school says take them off?
Sure,
They don't do it.
I mean, they would take them off, you know what I mean? Their coach would make them take them off.
And you always have one or two that are gonna buck you.
Sure, but I mean, we don't generally have that in sports because then it turns into a playing time issue, so they're gonna take that hat off real quick,
yeah.
so,
Yeah, I'm sure Coach Smith doesn't take their hat off.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know if he would allow it because I think they have to dress a
They
certain
dress up,
way, and
and same with going to a concert, you dress and you're professional, like I don't wear a hat when I wear my shirt and tie, but when I came to the game yesterday, I had a hat on.
What do you feel, Mr. Broadman, is the issue of not wearing the hats? How do you feel about that? Is that an issue here in this building? Not being allowed to wear a hat?
Are you asking if them not being able to wear a hat is an issue? I don't think it's a huge issue. I mean, I think they wanna wear hats. I think they have sometimes, I mean, we have kids who may wanna wear a hat because of religious reasons. They may wanna wear, I mean, I'm fine either way. If the kids ask for it, I don't really see an issue with it. But I'm
Yeah,
willing.
but you gotta be one way or the other.
So I would say if it was my decision, I would say let them wear hats.
Would have what?
Would let them wear hats.
Yeah.
If it was my decision, I would.
My only concern is with the 54% of the teachers, are we gonna have to have them be heard too? And is it gonna be room to room?
No, it's gonna be universal, just like any other role. And ultimately, when I first asked teachers, it was 90%. People raised their hand, yes, allow hats, and then somebody asked what if they hide something in their hat, or what if they're using it to cheat, which I don't know any kid who's gonna put their cheat sheet in their hat and take it out. You know, it just, you know, people fear change. I think that is the big thing. I think that
Are hoods included in this?
What's that?
No hoods.
Hoods are not included?
No hoods, because we don't want them interfering by blocking their ears. We don't want them with headphones on in class, you know. It's an educational facility, so we want to focus on making sure they're paying attention. But, you know, a baseball cap, you can see their ears, winter cap, you know, they're gonna just tell the kids
I
like.
thank you for answering my questions, but I leave you with a question.
Sure,
What's next?
you know what, you can never know,
No,
but,
what's next?
So, are we gonna leave it as Mr. Broadbent's decision, or you good with that?
I think it has to be a motion, but if we don't have a full board,
It's, we have a forum. If it's not a policy, do we have to actually make a motion on it though?
you're making a new policy.
Well, I think if you want, you know, if you, as board members, if you just wanna be on record as, you know, your thoughts, you can do that, yeah, but you have a quorum, so you can make motions on any action.
Do you know if your 50 or your 46% that are saying no, are they the 7th and 8th grade teachers, or it's a mix, or you really don't?
So it is a mix. I think our younger teachers are more in favor of it. I think some of the older teachers who it's been this way since they've been here, traditionally, you know, when they were in school, you took your hat off in the building because it was a respect thing, or just tradition.
And again, I go back to like when you go to an indoor concert, basketball game, adults are wearing hats, so they're not.
I mean no disrespect when I.
No, I don't either, I'm just saying, but there are people, I think that's just something that's changing, it's not.
Yeah.
So if these kids wanna wear a hat in school, but yet they go to a basketball game that night and they see half dozen grown-ups wearing them, it's.
Well, they wear them after school once, I mean technically the
But
way.
you know what I'm saying, like they see it anyway when they're going out, so why can't they?
And
I
they're
don't
wearing
know.
them at BOCES
I
too,
do.
and not having to take them off. and they-
That's the most difficult
Right.
challenge for
That's
me.
probably
is
where
when
they saw, where they
come
got the
back.
idea.
When they come
It'd be
back in the
nice.
afternoon and they've had their hat on for 3 or 4 hours and then they
Right,
come
and
back
then you don't
here.
wanna take it off because you have hat.
And I have to tell them to take their hat off, and most are respectful, some I have to take the hats, and some I've had to, you know, give detentions for, you know, insubordination. Well, that's something I have to deal with regardless if we have hats or not. I'm gonna, you know, kids aren't gonna be perfect, they make mistakes, they argue with stuff occasionally, but I'm willing to fight with them either way. Either way we go, I'll fight with them to tell them to take their hats off, or if by some chance they have an inappropriate hat, I will, you know, address that as well. It's not,
Okay, well, I'm gonna make a motion to allow hats. In favor, in grades 7 through 12 only. Shauna,
And you'll write up
Second.
something and put it out for them?
I would probably, I'll either send the kids an email, or I'll just meet with them real quick one morning, and I'll come in, explain.
and we can revoke this at any time.
Yeah, the idea is that, you know, everybody's been grateful to give you this privilege to wear them, don't screw it up, because if you do, we'll be back to no hats at all.
Okay,
And we have hat days and stuff, and during our hat days, we don't have issues, like, we're not having kids wear inappropriate hats, and they may wear goofy hats on those days, but it's not an issue, I've never had an issue with hats.
okay.
And on your, if you have 54% that say yes, and it's either gonna be all or none, are you gonna have the 46% in your office when Tommy's not paying attention because he's got a hat on?
Yeah, I don't know if a hat's gonna make a kid not pay attention, but I think there's,
You're gonna lose eye contact, that's for sure.
yeah, they put their heads down, they put their hoods up, and then you have to address that too. I'm gonna address whatever issues come about, so if anybody's worried about that, that's, you know, if there's gonna be a ton of issues, that's a ton of issues for me that I'm gonna have to address, so I'm willing to take that risk,
Okay.
you know, if that's what that,
Alright, so I have
Decision is.
Sean first. Second?
I'll second it with a trial.
Okay.
I'd like to hear next month how it
Janine,
goes.
second, all in favor?
we'll do.
And no.
No.
Okay. So, 2 and 2, and you're an aye.
With a break.
Yes.
So we'll try it out and I'll report next month. So,
Yes, please.
okay, we'll do. Any questions? I know, kind of spent a lot of time in hats, but any questions about what's going on in the high school there? Or in hats
That's
for me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Were there any questions from anyone on the consent agenda? No. Okay. Can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda? Sean first. Janine second, all in favor? Okay. Moving on to action items, personnel report. We had one resignation. A motion to accept the resignation of Katie Conklin, guidance counselor, effective September 30th, 2022. Janine first. Sean second, all in favor. And superintendent goals.
So I included my goals in your package for you to take a look at. Again, as I mentioned, you approved your board goals. And what I do is take your board goals and try to align my goals so that they mesh together. So adjustments are made with different things that are up for this year, things that we may be addressing that I know are on the table for this year. Obviously, the project's on the table this year, so those are some things that I included there. However, if there are other things that you would like me to include, or things that you don't want in there as goals, or anything that you, I don't know, any input you have, I can make adjustments to it, and if not, then we can approve the superintendent goals for this year.
Does anyone have any questions about the goals or want to look them over? Or are we good to approve them? Good? Okay. Motion to approve the superintendent's goals. Sean first. Janine second, all in favor? Okay, discussion items, school opening update.
So this, well, first, before I get into my part of it, I want to thank all of our supervisors for their preparations, whether it be in the business office, transportation, elementary, special programs, high school, whatever it is. We transitioned back this year as smooth as I've ever seen. You know, it was like day 2, and you would have thought we were here for 2 months, and that's the honest truth. And maybe it's partly to their, and partly because we're more normal than we've been too, but it was, I mean, kids were just kind of rolling around, and we were rolling right from the beginning. And very few, if any, issues. I know Mr. Ray mentioned a couple, but that's, I mean, some years we have a whole mess going on. It was a really, really strong opening in that sense. I really personally liked the opening this year. It's the first time we've used 3 days in August. That really allowed us to do some things and allowed the principals to do some things. I don't know if the principals loved it. I haven't really talked to them about that yet, as we'll meet soon about that kind of stuff. You know, the teachers, what they thought of it, but we got a lot done in 3 days. They mentioned some of the things that they did. We as a district, one of the things that I wanted to address with teachers, and we brought in investigator from the state police and people that are working with Child Protective and our child advocacy centers in the area, is just looking regionally at the number of issues we have in the area right now and what we're getting when we walk into the first day of school. You know, 2 months is a long time, and the stretch we went through is really taking its toll on a lot of different families and people. I can't, you know, I said this to the group in the meeting, I can't tell you how many people I have that are on paper considered homeless. I've I've never had those kinds of numbers before. That doesn't necessarily mean they're living on the street, but they don't have a home for themselves. The doubling up that's going on right now, probably the largest number of grandparents that I've ever seen raising kids right now. Just more than we're accustomed to in this district especially, but I just think it's a regional issue. So we brought in some speakers to talk a little bit about that and a little bit about what they're seeing out there, and then really get into some of the resources and things that are out there to help these families. I'm going to talk about another thing later in our discussion here, but really a lot of focus on recovery and support. And Herkimer County, one of the things, I mean, it's a great place to live, but we don't have a ton of resources ultimately, and that's a struggle, especially when the needs are high as they are now. So, and the more the needs have, the more that becomes sort of relevant to everybody and trickles down to everybody. So we had a program on that. I thought it went really well. It was informative and things to look for. They spoke to the teachers about, when they're speaking to kids and kids say things, our natural instinct as teachers is to dive into things and find out what's going on. That's not really the way. There's techniques to that, and you want to get into where you have people who have been trained in these things to speak with the children, the families, things like that. So it was at least I thought it was pretty informative, especially when it comes to high level things that are going on in the region and so forth. So other than that, it was a good opener. We're fully staffed. We've had a slight increase in our enrollment this year. Our programs are all up and running, and so far so good. This has been the longest opening for us initially. Usually, or what I mean by that is usually the opening update at the board meeting is long because we've been talking so much about COVID. I don't really have a lot to say about that right now. It's been good so far. Any questions on the school opening? I know the principal also presented as well. Anything?
Questions? No? Questions? Okay, capital project update.
So, we met a few weeks ago, so not a lot. We did have a meeting though in between our last meeting at the end of August and our meeting tonight. Just want to go over a couple things. If you've been out in front of the school, you'll see the expansion tanks are out there. They got today. They're continuing the prep work. I'm not going to say they're going to move them downstairs tomorrow, but they might. So that expansion tank work that's part of our emergency project is being done right now. I also mentioned as a side point to that, we did have an issue with the septic tank. Essentially the original steel septic tank collapsing outside the bus garage, which is a smaller tank. We did get that replaced this week, and everything is back up and running with a cement tank that none of us will have to worry about ever. So that's done. So that was a little bit of a surprise sort of replacement that we had this week as well. In terms of our other review stuff, I mentioned a little bit about the underground tank that we have, the fuel tank that we'll be replacing in the project. They are setting up, they have not done the geoprobe test to detect if the soils have been contaminated. I was hoping that would be done so I could give you an update on that. It has not. So that'll be one of the next things that goes on to see that old tank that's in the ground before we replace it with a new one. Do we have any issues out there? And that'll be something we're going to watch out for. Submission was submitted last week, as far as I have heard. 9/9, I believe it was submitted. We are expecting word from that in December. I mentioned that in one of my updates to all of you from SED, the way the timelines are working. Our goal is to have that, get ourselves situated, and hopefully be bidding on this project in February. Obviously, the earlier we can bid on the project, it's to our advantage. So we'll try to push this as quick as we can and get things situated for the bidding process in February. Between now and February, we'll be looking really closely at costs and things like that and developing plans. I've already mentioned a little bit last month about things that we may need to look at and some other additional items we may need to look at. Right now it's being submitted as is in hopes that we can get it all in under the current approved budget for the project. But again, we're going to have to be aware of things we'll need to discuss in terms of alternates and potential elimination items if it does not appear that the costs are going to come in the way we want them to. National Grid show was here last Thursday. Kelly, can you give just a quick update on what they had to say as you walked around with them?
They surveyed what we have for existing electrical supplies, and we're gonna go back and do some figures, calculations, and see what would be the best for us as far as incentives to replace, this, that, or whatever.
So the bottom line is we have a number of items on this list that would be potential items for rebates. Now, how we want to use those rebates is what they'll come back with. So once we have that list of things, whether it be LED lights that we're putting in, or change in controls of our heating and cooling systems, whatever it might be that helps to be energy saving, are potential opportunities for us to cut back on the cost. One of the ways we can cut back is they can basically pay for some of those costs, which reduces the amount of money it costs in the project. Some of it can be given in rebates later on in life, those kinds of things. So once they go back and evaluate after the walkthrough, they'll have a better idea of things that qualify, and then they have to quantify those types of things. So for example, one of the areas that they mentioned to Kelly was the auditorium. Yes, we're upgrading the auditorium lighting to more cost effective and more efficient lighting, but it's a little bit difficult for them to quantify it because it's not something that runs all the time, all those lights. So those are some of the things they have to do, where we know the gym lights are gonna qualify for it. So all those things are all part of this, but they did come finally. It took a while, but they got here, and it does look like we do have some things that will qualify. So again, even if it was $25,000, $40,000, it's $40,000 less than you're having to pay out the project. And then the last thing is the field lighting, which is the additional item I mentioned. Anonymous donor has spoke to us about the potential of doing an anonymous donation in terms of lighting on the field. I have had ongoing conversations. That is still moving forward. I have to make a call to the architect again this week. So we'll continue to move forward. That's going to be an interesting piece of the project because it's another separate item. So we have donation part of the project, we have the project, and then we have the federal money portion of the project that deals with air quality and things like that. So it's a real unique funded project when you have money coming from potentially from a donation, and you also have money potentially coming from the federal, which is basically a full-fledged pay of air quality things. And then you have the actual budget of the normal project part. So it'll be challenging paperwork-wise, it'll be challenging to place things around, and all these things are new to the architects because of all this federal money and things, and our business manager and so forth. So we'll be doing a lot with that, but I just wanted to let you know tonight that those discussions are continuing to be ongoing.
But we have not gotten any numbers.
For the lighting. So we got a rough estimate of that, which is really rough in terms of the lighting being somewhere in the range of $500,000 to $700,000 to put lights in out there because of the things. It would be a lot more if we didn't already have some prep work done, but it would be that, which would be basically 2 light poles on each side of the buildings. Any new stadiums that you see will have 2 light poles on each side. So that's essentially what that is, but it's not a definitive cost yet. Because there has to be some work put into that cost, I have to also make sure that the funding would be available to do that.
Okay.
If they're lighting the field back there, are we able to utilize it more and have soccer games out there?
So it's an excellent question. Mr. Doherty and I have talked a lot about that. So there would be potential for that to happen and have some soccer games on that field. Again, the 2 things that I've talked about in the past is this year we only have girls, so a lot of soccer games would put a lot of wear and tear. If you look at our soccer field, especially in front of goals and things like that, it puts a lot of wear and tear on the field. The second piece to that is it is narrower than our field. So track to track, width-wise, it's not as wide as our regulation field we have out there. So that's it. Can we play on it? Is it legal to play on it? Yes, but it is a narrower field that we would be playing on. So there would be a sacrifice playing under the lights on a narrower field. And I'm not a soccer person to quantify how important that is, but
I would just like to see it get used more than 4 games.
Agree. 100%. Well, keep in mind, there's track, things like that too in the spring.
Well, track, that's maybe 1 or 2 it gets dark, you know?
Well,
we have the-
Well,
Depending on-
you also have your sectionals and your league meets that we get stuck hosting now because we got the steeplechase there,
It would also-
Well, no, I know, but that's like 2 times, right?
Yeah.
Well-
So that's 6 times you're using it. I would
I
just
will-
like to make it possible to have the varsity play
Yeah,
soccer and have the modified it over here.
Yep. yeah, I think it's a great idea. I do. The other piece of it, is we could do some night track meets too. I'm not saying that that answers your question, but
And
it
it'll be here
could.
till 2 o'clock in the morning.
No, we don't have to do that long. I didn't say that the whole thing was gonna be under the lights. I just meant you could start it at 5:30 and then be done at 9 or something like that, yeah.
Who wants to do that?
Well, you wanna play under the lights.
I will say that for soccer though, that,
Soccer's gonna play.
so Mr. Shepherdson mentioned it, but our field right now is 80 yards wide. Your playable surface out there is about 59 yards wide on the football field right now, because of the track. So like if you were to go to Frankfurt and take an aerial shot of that, they have a squatty track. So it's, their turns aren't as much as ours and their straightaways are shorter. So it's a much bigger area there in the middle and they're able to have the same, almost the same exact size soccer field that we have where their football field is. Our track, for whatever reason, when it was designed, is elongated. So you're basically eliminating a fourth of the field that you're used to playing on by going from the 80 yards to the 60 yards. So it is a lot bigger deal for the coaches and the players to move to a much smaller facility. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just putting that out there now for your discussion as just another thing.
So just to
there.
clarify, you're looking at about 10 yards on each side? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Narrower?
yeah. But it'd be like the equivalent of shrinking from the high school gym down to the elementary gym to play a varsity basketball game on. So it does change the way you practice and you prepare. So it's not just, again, not saying that it can't be done. I'm just saying that it's not just like, okay, we're just going over there and doing it. So much like when they narrowed the football field this year, there was a lot of transition for them game planning, going from, excuse me, big wide field to now a more narrow 8-man field.
So yes, it can happen.
Good,
And the
thank
big
you.
question.
That's all I wanted to know.
Yeah.
And I expect it to happen, I'm kidding.
All right. And that's really all I have. It's only been a couple weeks, so that's all I have at this stage for an update.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna talk about the community schools.
Yeah, so I gave you a handout in a hard copy. I also sent this in an email. It's the exact same thing you got or you received in your email. Some of you may be familiar with this, community schools. Several schools in the region have, I'll use the word subscribe to this connected community school service, all the way from Oneida County to Herkimer County. It offers a wide range of resources, and as you look through this, I'm not gonna talk about everything that's in this, but essentially it comes in, you have people that are a part of this that are in the school, that work with families, that work with kids, that work with families who don't even have kids in the school yet. They provide supports in a number of different ways, whether it be guiding them toward outside resources, whether it be food, whether it be shelter if something happens, guiding them in those directions, whether it be clothing, whether it be social work services, whether it be counseling, whatever. They offer a wide gamut depending on the district's needs of what they're looking for. Now, this is something that started out in Oneida County essentially and is trickled into Herkimer County and continues to expand a great deal to the level that the county is now discussing making this part of what they do. BOCES has already made it a part of what they do in terms of supporting the regional schools through them. And, I think it's something that's really grown out of what I talked about earlier, the needs in the area and the lack of resources, and trying to bring resources and opportunities to support these people in need to this area that lacks so much. And there's a lot of different things that are involved, but essentially once you're involved with community schools, you have a person, multiple people who are involved directly with just your school in your community, and they are there to work not only with our people that we have in here, but also be able to get out to the community itself and work with the families out there. It is so far locally received a great deal of positive feedback from this program. There's a number of different programs that are focused on different things. Some people might have heard of like R4K and all these kinds of things that are out there, and that have really been targeted type of programs. This is really a connection to the community that tries to holistically look at everything, look at our district, and try to find ways that they can support us. Now, why is it being talked about today besides for the regional need? This grant is going through, and the likelihood of it being approved is pretty high, which means for the next 5 years, a program that would probably have some significant cost to it is going to be free to districts everywhere with this grant under the 5-year program. So the expectation is the grant approval would happen in the next couple of months, and we'd be looking at sometime in the winter us beginning to receive the supports of this program for the next 5 years. Now, what happens later on? So as time goes on here, these schools that are going to be involved in this grant will have an opportunity to evaluate the program, evaluate its effectiveness, be able to develop it over the next few years, and see where it stands. At some point, one of two things is going to happen. Either it's going to become part of a BOCES program where we would regionally all go in on it, or the county is going to be involved with this a little bit more, where they're going to provide some funding for the county schools and so forth. But the biggest thing is there's no obligation to go beyond the grant, which was a big question. Because it's really hard to say, can we support financially a program later on in life right now when nobody even knows what next year brings. So that's the big part of it. So really to us at this point in time, it's been of interest to us. Mrs. Holmes has met a few times. We've had meetings and regionally about this. We've talked to the schools that have had it. But to initially in the past year or two justify the cost versus the need and things we had, that was a little bit of a challenge for us with our smaller population. And it's not something you share. Each school has their own connected schools. So, but with it being now offered over a pretty lengthy period of time here, 5 years, at no cost, that offers an opportunity for us to utilize this resource and kind of evaluate it over the next few years. So that's really what this is about at this point in time. Does anybody have any questions on any of that or anything that I talked about tonight with it?
What exactly would that look like? Would there be somebody here, or is it only referrals?
No, there will be somebody here every single day. We would have to provide, one of the requirements is for us to provide a space, essentially, I'm gonna use the word office, but a space for them, where they, we have meetings together, they work directly with our guidance counselors. There'll be liaisons that are connected. We'll be involved a little bit, I believe, Ms. Holmes correct, in the hiring they told us to. So once we become connected, we would be involved. They would be an employee of West Canada, they'd be an employee of the nonprofit organization. But because it's our school, we'd be connected with that piece of that. Like anything, programs roll on having good people that are running or helping too, so that's a big part of it. So that's how it would work, but they would be here every day. There might even be multiple people here every day. And if it goes as planned, they would offer, one of the things that people have really tried to push onto the schools, and we're not really equipped to do it, because they can't get in to get help outside, they really are trying to push it on schools to do almost outside counseling, which is not really what we are trained to do in this building, So counseling and social work in a school building versus outside family social work are two different elements. But we do a lot more than we do because we know they can't get in. This is supposed to help us with that, and again, we'll evaluate how that is. This is supposed to help families who are in need. If we, listen, we've got somebody who just got evicted, we got to get to this family right away, and what can you do? And they get them hooked up right away with resources right off the get-go.
So that would be teachers reporting to them?
We'd have in the end, there'd be like the principals, we'd all be like on these committees that would talk, and they'd be working with our counselors, our social workers, our psychologists, our teachers could be involved in referring, families if kids look like they're struggling coming into school in the morning. families need help. That's one of the biggest things is just getting entire families support at times. You know, we can sometimes offer enough support to a child in here, but they go home, back home to the, you know, I mean, so you keep resetting it every day. So, you know, ways we can try to do that. So that's what this is about. But I think it's a great program. I've heard really good things about it. This grant, if it gets approved, and I'll keep you updated, gives us an opportunity to become involved with it too. Any other questions on this?
Okay.
We'll keep you updated.
Policy 7210, student evaluation, second reading.
Yeah, so we brought you back to policy. Mr. Broadbent, do you want to come up? I'll have Mr. Broadbent talk. He had his meeting with the teachers regarding this specific policy, and he got some feedback on it that I kind of want to talk about tonight, and see what our thoughts are on this.
Alright, so one of the key things that the teachers did not like with the policy change, they felt wouldn't benefit our students, is switching the final exam from 20% to 12%. They felt that currently the 20% benefits most of our students, and that if we change it to 12%, that would put them in a position where it would negatively affect them. So that would be one thing that they recommend that we don't push forward in this policy, don't change.
The remainder of the policies, they were overall in support of.
Overall, the 50, minimum 50, for the first 2 quarters, minimum 50 for the first marking period as a half-year course. Generally, most of them were on board with that, especially the middle school staff. Some question maybe only doing 1 marking period, and I think largely why we did 2 is because it would just be equivalent to 1 marking period of a half-year course. And to break it up with the half-year course being 1 quarter, which would actually make it work 2 quarters, when you do the final average there, would be different. So that was one of the key things. You know, the high school teachers were a little less in favor of the 50 at this point. But we are only piloting it actually right now in the middle school. So that'd be something that we can address and look at as we move on and see if that policy is beneficial to our students or not. I think it will be. All were good with PE counting towards GPA. You know, our PE teachers were very excited about that. Their class were going to be treated like any other class here, and expectations to do well and to show up and participate would be the same as any other class here. So that's really, you know, for that policy, other than the 20%, I think most people were on board with that.
So I want to speak on that. So I wanted to hear, and I spoke a lot about this last month, and I'm still, you know, I'll be interested to see, and I talked to Mr. Broadbent about this. I'm completely open to listening to, you know, how the teachers feel, and obviously things that are in benefit of the students, I'm always in favor of. So as we pilot the other portions of the policy and take a look at that, one of the things that we'll look at is, you know, over the last year to, well, I would say year mostly because of COVID, and then this year going forward, as we revisit this policy going into next year and see how things work, one of the areas that we would look at is, okay, we'll keep it at the 20%, but let's see how that works again. And if it's something we can revisit, I'm okay with that. Just like we're going to revisit whether the 50, you know, was a benefit to what we were trying to accomplish here. Again, it's a policy, it's a one, you know, for the year. We're gonna look at it, and I'm okay with that if that's how people feel at this point in time. So that's, you know, with that being said, that's how, you know, I took the feedback from that.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any other questions on this particular policy? We went through it verbatim last month as well.
So we're gonna stick with 12 for this year?
Stick with
Stick
the
with
20.
We're gonna stay status
Oh,
quo.
so that's gonna come out?
Yep,
Oh.
yep,
I thought it was changed.
nope, nope. We'll stay status quo with the way it is with that. That's
Okay.
the only thing. Everything else would be read as.
Yeah, so some of the largely the big changes in the policy would remain, would be the minimum 50 for the first and second marking period in the middle school, not for any high school courses. So if you're taking a high school course in the middle school, that wouldn't apply to it, like Spanish 1. So that minimum 50 wouldn't apply. And PE being counted towards GPA, that would, remain in the policy. And then we made some minor policy changes to add parent and guardian. Because as Mr. Shepherd's been saying, that a lot of our students may be raised by guardians, grandparents, family members.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of cleaning up some of the wording in there, but the key changes are that the minimum 50 for the first two market periods, first market period for half-year courses.
So,
And then only middle school?
That's just
for
middle
this
school
year,
for
yeah,
this
we're
year.
gonna see how it goes, and then we'll see if we're gonna expand it. So, my idea behind this is to take any input you have tonight. I mean, we certainly can approve a policy tonight, because there isn't a lot of changes to it, but, there's nothing to say, we come back in October, we get it all updated for you, so you get one more third reading of it, just to make sure you're okay with it, because everything would retro back, we're still in the first marking period, so we'd be able to do that as well. If everybody's comfortable with it, we can approve it tonight, and I can give you the updated copy so that you have it.
The only updated is the 12 to 20.
That's the only thing we'd be changing, yeah.
From our last
Yeah.
copy.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Everybody good?
I am,
Okay.
just change that.
Okay. Motion to approve policy 7210, student evaluation. Shauna first. Janine second, all in favor. Okay. Policy 7212.
Okay, so and you can add in, Mr. Broadbent, if there's anything, this remains unchanged, correct, from last month's reading?
Yeah, teachers were happy, fine with the changes, no, opposition to what we were recommending. So we could approve it as it was last month, if you like.
Motion to approve policy 7212. Janine first. Shauna second, all in favor. Okay. Announcements, Tuesday, October 11th is our regular board meeting.
Can I pause you?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna pause here before we do that, because it's not on the agenda, because I officially got information on this. So, I sent this out in an update today to all of you. Herkimer BOCES has designated September 27th as the universal vote date for their revamped, reduced BOCES project that we voted on already. So, I do have the paperwork for that, I received it, they did do the presentations I shared with you last week, if anybody went to that. And I was going to talk a little bit about that tonight, but my meeting on this is on Friday, and I have some questions about the paperwork. I'm not quite following it right now. So I want to make sure that it's the correct paperwork, the correct understanding of what this all means, so I can talk to you about what the changes are and what the reductions mean for our district and so forth. But with that being said, I'll take a little bit of time on the 27th. I'll give you the paperwork once I have it updated right away, so you can go through it. We can have a brief discussion on the 27th in terms of what we will, our thoughts on it, but we will need to meet again on the 27th to cast a vote on that. So what I'll need from everybody is a time, and we'll need at least 4 people to be able to attend that special meeting on the 27th.
What day of the week is that?
Tuesday, I believe. Am I right in saying that? Tuesday, September 27th.
Yes.
So, I'd like to throw out potentially like a 4 or 4:30, I just don't know how tight that is for some of you.
I can be here. Anybody else?
I can, I work from home. So. Did you get the paperwork dated 8?
I could be here by 4.
4?
DJ?
Yes,
Was the paperwork you received dated the 8 from our meeting?
if you were at the meeting, you would have
Yeah.
gotten that, but I have some questions on
Okay.
that, yeah. I have some questions before I should share that out too much. I can, but I don't, questioning some things on it.
If no one else, I could reach out to Carson and Sarah and see if either of them could.
Right now I can't.
You can't be that day, okay? Okay. Yeah,
Away soccer game that night.
what's that?
Away soccer game that night.
I think it's at 7 p.m. now, so it should be
we do 4 o'clock then? It will be brief, you know what I mean, I'll talk, I would say we'd be out of here by 4:30 at the latest.
4 to 4:30?
Yeah, about that, yeah.
Cause they do it in the morning, but.
It's up to you, I mean, listen, I was gonna say, the only thing is I need a little bit of time just to go over some stuff with you. It's not like the other one where we just come in and vote and leave, I will wanna talk to you just a little bit about it, so you know what you're voting on.
I'll reach out to them and.
Okay, so we'll tentatively schedule it for 4 o'clock right now. I shouldn't even say tentatively, we'll do it for 4.
Okay.
4 o'clock on the 27th.
You'll send us a reminder,
Yep,
right?
I will send the whole thing, and like I said, I'll send you
I'll have my
the
book.
documents too ahead of time before the 27th, so you have them.
Okay. You're good?
Yes.
Alright. Public comments. We welcome public comments that are related to the agenda. We ask that you be respectful of time. We ask that you state your name and where you live. Please remember you cannot identify specific staff, student, personnel, or board persons. If you need to address a specific situation, we ask that you contact the superintendent directly. Public comments. None? Okay. Motion to adjourn. Jimmy in first. Sean a second. All in favor?